I refuse to let my dad's new wife hold my baby because she's not family. I, 27 female, just had my first baby 2 months ago. A little girl who has basically turned my whole life upside down in the best, most exhausting way possible. My dad, 56 male, has been remarried for about 3 years now to a woman I'll call Janet, 54 female. She's, well, I'm not even sure what word fits her. Polite? Persistent? Awkwardly involved? I've never really warmed up to her, and I don't think she's ever fully warmed up to me either, though she tries in a way that feels off. This past weekend, my dad and Janet came over to meet the baby for the first time, and I, in the heat of the moment, told her she couldn't hold her. Like, straight up said, "I'm sorry, but you're not family." Yep, that came out of my mouth, and I swear the room went dead silent, like in one of those movies where you hear a record scratch. Janet's face dropped, my dad blinked at me like I'd slapped him, and my partner froze mid-sip of coffee. The thing is, it's not just about this one moment. It's not like she asked and I randomly decided to be cruel. There's years of history, of complicated feelings about my dad's choices, about Janet inserting herself into moments I think should be mine and my mom's, about boundaries that have been ignored before. But that day, with my tiny newborn in my arms, all I could think was, no, not her, not now. The awkwardness lasted the rest of the visit. Janet mostly stared at her lap. My dad kept trying to make light conversation, and I held my baby a little tighter. And now I'm sitting here running the whole thing back in my mind, wondering if I went too far or if I just finally drew a line I should have drawn a long time ago. I've always had a complicated relationship with my dad. When I was little, he was around, but not present. Like, he'd show up to my school plays and hand me flowers, but he'd be on his phone half the time, or leave right after because he had work to finish. He and my mom split when I was 13, and that was a whole mess in itself. It wasn't explosive, no screaming matches in the kitchen or throwing dishes, but it was cold, distant. They sat me down at the table one day and told me they'd grown apart, like they were breaking up over coffee instead of ending a 20-year marriage. For a while after that, I lived mostly with my mom. My dad got his own apartment and would have me over every other weekend, which at first felt kind of special. Just us, ordering takeout, watching movies. But then he started dating again. A lot. He'd introduced me to these women who would act like they were auditioning for Stepmom of the Year, and I hated it. I didn't want to go shopping together with someone who was basically a stranger. I didn't want unsolicited advice on how to connect with my dad more. And I definitely didn't want to watch them touch his arm or laugh too loudly at his jokes. It was gross to me because it felt like every new girlfriend was just another reminder my family was never going back to the way it was. When I was 23, my dad met Janet. At first, I thought she was just another in the revolving door. She's the kind of woman who tries to be fun, bright scarves, loud jewelry, big hand gestures when she talks. She has this overly sweet tone that makes me feel like she's talking to a much younger person, like I'm a kid she's trying to win over. But she wasn't pushy at first, so I mostly ignored her. Then, maybe a year in, I realized she wasn't going anywhere. The thing is, my dad actually didn't tell me when they got serious. One day, I came over for our usual dinner, and she was there, cooking like she had always belonged in his kitchen. My stuff from my bedroom at his place had been moved into storage because they needed the space. I remember standing there in the doorway, trying to pretend it didn't feel like another door slamming in my face. When they got married, I didn't even know about the proposal until my mom told me. My dad had apparently mentioned it to her in passing, but to me he said nothing until they'd already set a date. I wasn't in the wedding. I sat in the second row watching my dad smile at her like she was his whole world, and all I could think was, that used to be my mom. That used to be us. After that, every holiday felt off. Christmas at their house, she'd hand me a gift labeled "From Dad and Janet" and make these little comments about our family. Easter brunch, she'd insist I take a nice picture with Dad and me. Once, she tried to introduce me to someone at a work party as her stepdaughter, and I practically choked on my drink. I never said anything outright, but I kept my distance. She wasn't mean, she wasn't cruel, but she wasn't mine. She wasn't family in my head, no matter how many times she said the word. So over the years, I think my dad noticed I was polite, but cold. He never pushed. But Janet, she'd push just enough. A hand on my arm when I was telling a story, asking for my number so we could chat without Dad, sending me recipes. None of it sounds bad on paper, but it was relentless, like she was trying to work her way into a role she hadn't earned. So when I got pregnant last year, I knew things were about to get messy. I told my mom first, of course, then my partner, then reluctantly, my dad, who was excited in his dad way, big smile, lots of "I can't believe it," but immediately followed with, "Janet's going to be over the moon." And sure enough, the texts started coming. "How are you feeling, sweetie? Can I come to one of your ultrasounds? You know, I'd love to be there to help you after the baby's born." I dodged. I gave vague answers. I told her I'm keeping visits small after the birth. I thought she'd get the hint. She didn't. And maybe that's the heart of it. She never gets the hint because in her mind, she's already in my inner circle. But in my mind, she's not even in the building. When I found out I was pregnant, it was a Wednesday morning in late March, cold, gray, and drizzly. I remember sitting in my bathroom, staring at the two pink lines, feeling this weird mix of terror and joy bubbling up in my chest. My partner was still asleep, and for a few minutes, I just sat there alone, hand over my mouth, letting it sink in. I knew my life had just split into a before and an after. I told my mom that afternoon. She cried, happy tears, and immediately started talking about baby blankets and old family traditions she wanted to pass down. My mom is my safe place, so her excitement made me feel grounded. Then I told my partner that evening, and we had our own private, messy, laughing, crying moment together. Telling my dad, well, that was different. It took me almost 2 weeks to do it. I kept rehearsing in my head because I knew the second I told him, I'd also be telling Janet by default. It's not that I wanted to hide it from her forever, but pregnancy felt so personal, so fragile. I wanted to control who knew and when. But eventually, I FaceTimed him, and the smile on his face when I said, "You're going to be a grandpa," was genuine. I could see him blinking back tears, and then right on cue, he said, "Oh, Janet's going to be over the moon when I tell her." I felt my stomach tighten. I hadn't given him permission to tell her yet, but I didn't say anything, and within an hour I got my first text from her. "Sweetie, I'm so happy for you. You're going to be such a wonderful mom." It was followed by a link to an article titled 10 Things Every First-Time Mom Should Know, which, thanks, I guess. As the months went on, the pattern continued. Anytime I posted a bump picture on Instagram, she'd comment things like, "Our little one is growing so fast." "Ours?" Or, "Grandma can't wait to meet you." She'd send me Pinterest nursery ideas, hand-me-downs from her niece's kids, and unsolicited tips like how I should avoid spicy food or sleep on my left side. I know she thought she was being helpful, but to me it felt invasive. My mom and my partner's mom were both respectful. They asked before giving advice. They waited to be invited into appointments. Janet just inserted herself. The real tipping point came in my third trimester when she texted me asking if she could be in the delivery room. I nearly dropped my phone. I typed and deleted about 10 different responses before finally landing on, "We're keeping it just me, partner, and my mom." She didn't reply, but the next day my dad called to check in and in the middle of the conversation said, "You know, Janet's just excited. She really wants to be part of this." I bit my tongue so hard, I swear I tasted blood. By the time my daughter was born, I had a list in my head of exactly who I'd let hold her in those first few weeks. My mom, my partner's parents, a couple of close friends. That was it. I had read so many articles about newborn immune systems, about how overstimulation can be overwhelming, about how the postpartum period is sacred. But if I'm being totally honest, it wasn't just about health and bonding, it was about control. This was my baby, my moment, my little family, and I didn't want Janet staking any kind of claim on it. The day we came home from the hospital, I turned my phone on for the first time in days, and there it was. "Can we come meet her this weekend?" From my dad. Not, "Can I come?" but "Can we?" And I swear my blood pressure spiked. I told my partner I'd allow a short visit, but I was already rehearsing how to politely, or maybe not so politely, keep Janet from holding the baby. I didn't want to be mean, but I also didn't want to feel bulldozed in my own home. It was a line in the sand, even if they didn't know it yet. It was a Saturday afternoon, sunny, but with that sharp chill that makes you want to stay curled up under a blanket. My partner and I had spent the morning doing the usual newborn routine, feedings, diaper changes, rocking, repeat, and I had actually managed to get my daughter down for a short nap in her bassinet. I was exhausted, but jittery because my dad and Janet were any minute. I told them to keep it short. An hour at most. I'd even sent a text saying, "Please wash your hands before touching her and no kissing her face. We're being extra careful while she's so little." I thought that might hint that I wasn't planning on passing her around like a party favor. They arrived right on time. My dad came in with a big, goofy grin and a teddy bear almost the size of my baby. Janet was holding a bouquet of pink roses wrapped in glittery paper. She was wearing perfume. I could smell it from 3 feet away, which made my internal newborn mom alarms go off. We sat in the living room, my dad asking all the predictable questions. How's she sleeping? Is she eating well? Do we need anything? Janet smiled and nodded along, leaning in every now and then to peek into the bassinet. "She's just perfect," she cooed, her voice soft but laced with this giddy anticipation. After about 15 minutes, my daughter started stirring, making those little baby grunts that are somehow both adorable and slightly alarming. I scooped her up, settling into the couch to feed her. Janet watched every move like she was memorizing it. When I burped the baby and she gave this tiny squeaky hiccup, Janet leaned forward, hands outstretched, and said brightly, "Can I hold her?" It was like a trapdoor opened under my stomach. I knew this moment was coming, but I hadn't expected it to hit with such force. My heart was pounding, my mind was flashing through every irritation from the past 3 years, every overstepped boundary, every "our family" comment, every time she inserted herself into something that wasn't hers. I took a breath. I could have lied, said she was fussy or needed a nap, but instead the words came out before I could stop them. "I'm sorry, but you're not family." The silence was immediate and heavy. My dad's eyes widened, Janet's hands froze midair before she slowly pulled them back into her lap. My partner looked at me like I'd just watched him throw a grenade. Janet gave this tight little smile, the kind people give when they're trying very hard not to cry in public. "Oh, okay," she said softly. She glanced at my dad, who was still staring at me, and I swear I saw a flicker of something. Anger? Disappointment? Before he cleared his throat and changed the subject. The rest of the visit was painfully awkward. My dad made small talk about his garden. Janet kept her eyes on her knees. I sat there, baby in my arms, heart pounding in my ears, part of me feeling satisfied that I'd drawn a firm boundary, part of me feeling like I'd just detonated a bomb I couldn't undetonate. When they left, Janet gave me a polite nod but didn't meet my eyes. My dad hugged me stiffly. No, I love you. No, thanks for having us. Just a quick goodbye. The second that the door closed, my partner turned to me and said, "Wow, okay, that was a choice?" And it was. One I can't take back. They'd barely been gone 10 minutes when my phone buzzed. It was my dad. I figured maybe he'd left something behind, but nope. It was a text. "I don't know what that was about, but you really hurt Janet today." I just stared at the screen, pulse pounding again. No, "Are you okay?" No, "Can we talk?" Just straight to defending her. I didn't reply right away. I didn't trust myself not to say something I'd regret. A few minutes later, another buzz, this time from Janet. "I'm sorry if I overstepped. I just wanted to hold my husband's granddaughter. I hope someday you'll let me." That one made my stomach twist. It wasn't angry. It wasn't passive-aggressive. It was sad. And for a split second, guilt pushed through the wall of stubbornness I'd built. But then I remembered the way she'd just assumed she'd get to hold my baby, the way my dad had let her be part of so many moments I hadn't invited her into, and my spine stiffened again. I didn't respond to either message that night. By the next morning, my mom had called. Apparently, my dad had told her what happened, or his version of it, anyway, because she opened with, "Honey, what exactly did you say to Janet?" I told her, word for word. There was a pause, then a sigh. "I understand why you feel the way you do," she said carefully, "but you have to know that's going to cause a rift. Your dad's not just going to let that slide." And she was right. By Monday, my cousin texted me to say she'd heard I'd banned Dad's wife from touching the baby and wanted to know if it was true. My aunt chimed in with a Facebook message that was basically, "She's not the enemy, you know." I didn't even know they talked to Janet like that. It felt like I'd accidentally started some family group chat dedicated to my villain origin story. Meanwhile, my partner stayed mostly neutral, which somehow annoyed me even more. When I asked him what he thought, he shrugged and said, "It's your call who holds her. I just think maybe the way it came out could have been softer." Softer. I guess that's the thing. If I wanted soft, I could have managed it. But in that moment, I didn't want soft. I wanted final. I wanted her to hear the words and understand there was a line she couldn't cross. And maybe that was selfish. Or maybe it was overdue. Either way, the air between me and my dad has been thick ever since. He hasn't asked to come over again. Janet hasn't texted me. The silence is loud. It's been almost 2 weeks since that visit, and I still replay it every night. When the house is quiet and my daughter is finally asleep on my chest, I'll be sitting there in the dim light, her tiny breaths warm against my skin, and suddenly my mind drags me back to the living room. Janet's outstretched hands, my own voice saying those 5 words like a slammed door. I keep wondering if it was about her at all, or if it was about my dad. Maybe I've been carrying this unspoken resentment for years, about the divorce, about him letting other women take up space in my life without asking me how I felt. Janet just happened to be the one standing in front of me when I decided I was done pretending. The truth is, I'm fiercely protective right now. I know that's normal for new moms. Every book and article says the postpartum period makes you feel like a guard dog over your baby. But sometimes I wonder if my protectiveness crossed into pettiness. Was I protecting my daughter from germs and overstimulation? Or was I protecting myself from having to watch Janet get a moment I didn't want her to have? And then there's the fear. Not of Janet, but of what this means long term. My dad is stubborn. I'm stubborn. We've gone months without talking before, but this feels different. This feels like I threw down a gauntlet I can't just pick back up. Will he stop trying? Will my daughter grow up barely knowing her grandfather because I couldn't stomach letting his wife hold her baby for 10 minutes? I sometimes picture a future family gathering, my daughter a few years older, running around the yard, and I see Janet there, standing off to the side, polite smile in place, the unspoken wall between us still solid. And I can't decide if that image makes me feel relieved or deeply, deeply sad. I think about texting her, just to explain. But what would I even say? "Sorry I said you're not family, I'm just holding a decade of unresolved emotional baggage against you"? I don't think there's a Hallmark card for that. So instead, I sit here, night after night, with my baby in my arms, telling myself I'm just doing what's best for her. But in the back of my mind, there's a small, insistent voice asking, or are you just doing what feels best for you? So here's where I'm at. I refuse to let my dad's wife, who has been in my life for 3 years but has never felt like family to me, hold my 2-month-old daughter. I said it to her face, in my own living room, in front of my dad. The words were blunt, maybe even cruel, but they were honest. I know the official reasons I told myself in the moment, that I was protecting my baby from unnecessary contact, that newborns don't need to be passed around, that I wanted to keep those early bonding moments for people I feel truly close to. And those things are all true. But if I strip those reasons down to the core, there's also this. I didn't want her holding my baby. Not because she's unsafe, not because she's a bad person, but because she represents something I still haven't forgiven my dad for. She's the embodiment of a fracture in my family that I've never really accepted, no matter how many holidays we've shared or polite conversations we've had. Now my dad is upset. Janet is hurt. Some relatives think I'm being petty. Others think I'm setting healthy boundaries. My partner says it's my call who holds her, but maybe I could have handled it better. And me? I'm stuck in this loop. Part of me feeling fiercely protective, part of me feeling ashamed. I keep thinking, if someone had done this to my mom, how would I feel? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer. I don't know if I've just made a principled stand about boundaries, or if I've blown up a relationship for no real reason other than spite. So, am I overreacting? Was I right to draw a hard line about who gets to hold my baby? Or did I let old resentment cross into being completely unfair?